Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar. I'd like to thank you all for attending this afternoon. I'll do some quick introductions here. Our webinar will be running from 12 o'clock to 1 p.m. and you should hear audio now, and if not you can dial in. I can see some of the control panel here that most of you are all in and doing fine, but if you do have any questions or issues, there is a control panel in there as well that you can address any questions during the program to us directly, or if you have any technical issues as well, and we'll keep an eye on that. So in your control panel for the webinar, please feel free to use the questions during or after the webinar. Some quick introductions. My name is Dave Kyle, and I'm here with Matt Schmidt. Matt, want to introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matt Schmidt with Ease Technologies.
And as I mentioned, I'm Dave Kyle. We're with Ease Technologies out of Columbia, Maryland, where we provide consulting services and cloud solutions for the Baltimore, Washington region. Both Matt and I have been in the IT industry for quite a number of years and consult with a number of enterprise, education, small and medium-sized businesses. So our agenda today is keeping your business secure online. That's actually, oh, excuse us, I think our screen just went out. We'll get that back for you. There we go. Our agenda for our webinar today, we'll be discussing social engineering, cybersecurity threat examples, some of the issues that are specific to small and medium-sized businesses today, and most importantly, what can you do to keep yourself protected online and your business as well. And again, anytime during the program, please feel free to send us over a question. We have some questions that came in before, and I do have those with me, and I know some of you had some areas we want to cover for you, and we'll get those answered for you today. So in our first slide, it's been an interesting year, and Matt and I, we were talking before the webinar about just even in 13, 14 months, just so much has happened in this space. And it's been going on for quite a while, but I think from a media standpoint, accounts like Target and Home Depot really are higher profile organizations that have been hacked. Obviously, Sony in the last 2 months has made a lot of notice in the media and things like that, and even smaller organizations like the Park and Fly over at BWI, which I don't think that the BWI one was hacked, but the point of sale systems at some other Park and Flies in other parts of the country. Even I was telling Matt earlier that the Lowe's Ferry point of sale system was hacked and compromised, these are all well-known names. BCGE is actually a bank in Switzerland, so a Swiss bank was compromised over the last year. Chase Bank was compromised this past summer, and in the upper left-hand corner here is the United States Central Command. Now, they weren't hacked as much as their social media account was compromised and their password was taken, and if they would have done some very simple steps that we'll share with you today, they could have prevented their own personal attack. So we have a lot of good things to cover here for you, and want to share with you just some other information as we get started. So Brian Birch from Symantec spells out what's going on in small and medium-sized businesses, that the number of attacks has increased up 91%. And it's really a pointed thing, because again, our slide just in front of this was discussing the number of high-profile attacks. What you're not hearing about is some of these smaller attacks on businesses of our size.
Yeah, and the quote on the next slide is really very telling, because I think a lot of people, particularly in small businesses and maybe even in your personal life, are lulled into a false sense of security because they think that the bad guys are going after the bigger players, and they certainly are. But a lot of times they're getting to the bigger players by going through small businesses. So it's really important not to have that false sense of security.
Exactly. And Matt, what are some of the things that we use typically, or we're consulting with our accounts to make sure they have today?
So the next slide kind of shows the bare minimum of what we expect to see in an environment. You want to make sure you have a good, solid firewall as your first line of protection of your network. You want to make sure you're using antivirus such as Symantec, McAfee. There are many other players out there in this space, and some basic spam filters. You want to make sure that you're doing due diligence to catch the things at the door before they get onto your network. Now, this is not foolproof. This is not perfect, but it's the first line of defense, and it's very important.
Right. Yeah. The next thing that we want to talk about is really kind of the centerpiece of the conversation today, which is social engineering. And for a lot of folks, they haven't heard about this, but really to define it for us, it's the psychological manipulation of people into performing actions or divulging confidential information. And really, this is what's been going on as the biggest challenge right now in security. We've, as Matt shared with you in the previous slide, we do have firewalls that we're using. We have virus protection and spam filtering. And right now, hackers and cyber thieves are moving past that. And I want to share with you an example of something that like right now.
Well, you always go after the easiest attack point, the weakest link in the chain, and at this point, it's still the human being. So, you know, with a little bit of common sense and good behavior, we can help and change some of that. So here's an example.
Hi, this is John from the corporate office with Starbucks.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, pretty good. I was just calling. We were having problems with people calling in and pretending they're the corporate office, and we just wanted to let you know that if anyone calls in and says they're with the corporate office, just not to give them any information and not to believe them.
Okay.
Because apparently people have been calling in and, you know, just making prank calls, I assume.
Okay, great.
Okay, and who's this?
Okay, thanks for letting us know.
Sure. Who's this I'm speaking with? So your last name?
Remont.
Okay, and what's your employee number, or I guess we could look it up by your cell phone number, whatever phone number's on file with us.
Wait, you just want my partner numbers?
Sure.
13.
Okay, but do you have a phone number? Because that's the easiest way to look up your file here.
68.
And you remember that part where I said not to give out personal information to anyone pretending to be the corporate office?
Yes.
Why'd you just give me all that?
I don't know.
I'm a prank caller.
I ended up finding this on YouTube a few months ago, and there's actually hours of these kind of prank calls that are being done out there, and Matt and I are laughing because it is kind of sad but true. And interestingly enough, just 3 months ago, I had a phone call at home on my cell phone, and gentleman invited me to that he was from the Windows company, and they wanted me to help protect my computer, and they wanted me to log on and log onto a website so they could help protect me. So the message here is that mechanisms for social engineering come in many different forms. And we just identified and showed you how phone calls are used, and there's some other examples we'll show you in some other slides down further in the webinar. But email is the primary one, thumb drives, social media, phone calls, as you mentioned, and dumpster dives. And dumpster dives, Matt, do you want to explain that for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, dumpster dives is the good old-fashioned somebody's going through your trash. So this could be at your business or at your house, but they're literally going through your trash and looking for any kind of piece of mail that has some kind of identifying information that they can take and use later to try to fool somebody else into believing that they are you. So an oldie, but still very relevant.
And the one thing that we'll see a lot through this, and what we want to share with you, it's not just one method; it's a combination of mechanisms that are being used. And so it isn't just email. Maybe it isn't just social media. It isn't just a phone call. It's several things combined together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we just wanted to kind of give a broad definition of terms. So. Of some of the things that we're talking about today. So malware is kind of the overarching broad term used to describe any kind of malicious program that's used to be hostile towards your computer. So any kind of virus can be a type of malware. A virus is specifically designed to replicate itself, kind of like the flu virus, and to do harmful activities to your computer. A Trojan horse is very much like the Greek myth that we all learned in school, designed to look like something else, but inside there is some software that is designed to do harm. Spyware is, again, kind of a little bit of a broad term. It's designed to be on your desktop, laptop, and capture information. One type of spyware is a keylogger, which is a program that is basically installed and records users' keystrokes so that somebody else can figure out what you're typing on your computer. And then phishing is a term just an attempt to acquire information masquerading as something else. And we'll show you some examples of some phishing attacks a little later.
And one of the biggest keyloggers out there that is used by hackers is what's called Zeus keylogger. And actually these Trojan horses, these viruses, these keyloggers, spyware, have all specific names that based on who wrote the package, and then it is sold off to hackers and cyber thieves.
Yeah, they're very proud of themselves. So.
Our first virus we're going to talk about that was used, interesting enough, viruses have been around a long time. This is not anything new that in the PC industry. I remember there's been some out there for back in the 90s and even late 80s on mainframe and mini computers. But the one I'm going to mention here is kind of unique in that it was the first one that was used in a cyber attack against another nation state that we see in a physical attack. And it's called the Stuxnet virus. It was created by the U.S. and Israelis together back in 2007. The message here is how the virus was spread. Basically, the attack was designed to go after the nuclear program in Iran and shut down their centrifuges that were refining uranium. And so the virus that was created was specific to hardware devices, specifically Siemens hardware products, and how it was distributed, interestingly enough, was on thumb drives. So the virus was created, is actually what's called a worm, so it can travel throughout the network. It was loaded onto thumb drives. These thumb drives were dropped out through the parking lot in Iran, and where the centrifuges and the systems were being used, and employees picked the thumb drives up, put them in their computers, and the virus went through the network. And then at some point in time later on, the attack took place, and centrifuges then were knocked out. So, I think it was 30 to 50% of all the centrifuges that were being used by Iran in this one building, if not more, were taken out of commission back in 2007. Interestingly enough, the Stuxnet virus is actually a package, like many viruses. It did get released out into the wild and was only recently used just last month again. And I read about this last week, Matt, that a German steel mill was attacked by this particular virus. I'm not sure the details, but it was just sort of noted that this is the second time there was a physical attack, so it's kind of unique.
So a couple of lessons here. You know, if you do find a thumb drive that you don't recognize, do not plug it into your computer to find out what's on it. So, but I think what's most concerning about this, and this isn't to make any kind of judgment, but you have an example here of state-sponsored attacks. So for better or for worse, whether, you know, who's the good guy, who's the bad guy, you know, in this case may be obvious, but now you have nation states behind this, and now it's released into the wild so that the bad guys are actually taking it and modifying it and making it worse. So it's just an example of a really bad problem.
Yep. It could be another example of one. This is from a TED conference that I think we want to share with you.
In the summer of 2008, a country that shall not be named received a phone call from the Chinese government advising them against receiving His Holiness the Dalai Lama on an upcoming state visit. There was only one problem. The visit was secret. How could the Chinese have known? Well, the Dalai Lama turned to this team from the Information Warfare Monitor, the best of its kind, to help find the mole and neutralize the threat. And while James Bond had Q, who gave him the laser watch and, of course, the exploding pen, this team had Palantir. We gave them the ability to make sense of vast amounts of data and quickly differentiate between friend and foe. And what they found was truly amazing. The Dalai Lama did have a mole, but it wasn't human. They had been successfully targeted by Chinese spies, cyber spies. Using a technique called spear phishing, the Dalai Lama's computer infrastructure had been infected with a virus that gave the adversary control over their machines. So you may be familiar with phishing. This is the indiscriminate emailing of millions of people in the hopes of getting a few poor suckers to give up their login credentials. Spear phishing, as the name implies, is much more targeted. The adversary will research you, your interests, your friends, your behavior, and craft an email that plausibly comes from someone that you know. This email will have an attachment, a Word doc, or a PDF file. You'll open it, and you'll have been spear phished. The adversary now has control over your computer, which they can use to, for example, turn on your webcam to literally see and hear what you're saying in your office, send email to anyone as if they were you, and even exfiltrate data right off of your computer, including, as in this case, the Dalai Lama's negotiation position vis-a-vis China, a very useful thing to have if you're the Chinese. Think about how much spy tradecraft has changed. If James Bond wanted to steal a dossier, he'd have to come crashing through the front door in his Aston Martin, wrestle some man-eating worms, break some gorgeous girl's heart, grab the goods, and get rescued by the CIA. These guys literally took the goods while sitting at home in their pajamas. But the already intriguing plot actually thickens. So the good guys, armed with a heroic amount of Red Bull, shaken not stirred, uncovered a vast network of 1,300 computers in 103 countries that had been infected. The preponderance of these infections were against targets with interests in South and Southeast Asia, both countries and companies. This network, dubbed the GhostNet, had been active for 2 years and was highly active until the team made its existence public. So, as you can see, the face of espionage has changed. As recent events with Google have highlighted, the adversary targets both countries and companies for both political and economic gain. Your automated intrusion detection systems and firewalls can't keep them out. The adversary is patient and adaptive, and most importantly, targets the weakest part of the network, humans. So the next time you get an email with an attachment, beware, there just might be someone sitting on the other end in their bathrobe eagerly trying to steal your most sensitive IP. Don't bother calling James Bond. Call on the cyber spies. Thank you.
So kind of in review, again, we use the term here nation state, which simply means that a country was attacking an individual, an organization, or another country. Again, using the term here spear phishing, which is a targeted attack as opposed to a general phishing attack, which is just a broad scale. We'll give you some examples of some of those. The specific attack here was against the Dalai Lama, but the targets were not the Dalai Lama first, it was associates. So they went outside, got into email, compromised those situations of those computers, and then approached and got themselves in. So it was sort of a targeted, but outside their bullseye, and then getting inside next. Essentially, what they ended up doing is, as described in the video, is they took control of his PC and had access to all his information and data and files. Let's talk about another one. This one's in the United States. It happened this past spring. It was for actually another intellectual property. Interesting enough, the Chinese were the ones that had done it. It was a spear phishing attack again. The specifics were that a board member had their email spoofed and sent out an attachment to other members of the board as well as other employees at Alcoa. And as a result, people on thinking that it was really that person sending out that email double-clicked on what they thought was the agenda, and it turns out to be malware. And then those systems were compromised. As a result, there was a certain amount of access that the Chinese then got to, and Alcoa was at the time, I'm not sure all the details, but they were involved in steel manufacturing, and it seems that some of the intellectual property that they held in that process was compromised and taken by the Chinese in this particular situation. So again, another specific spear phishing attack. Matt, want to move over to the next one, or you want to add
well,
that?
The only thing I want to add is just to point out that this is, in this last case, we're talking about intellectual property. So they're not just, this isn't just bad guys that are out for credit card information or social security numbers or bank accounts. This is actually stealing your company's information. So, it just raises the stakes to that next level.
Just going to bring up the Sony hack a little bit. There's still a lot we don't know. The things that are interesting that I've seen in this is that Sony's actually been hacked, and they have many businesses, about 36 times over the last 3 years. One of the first ones happened about 2.5 years ago when the Sony PlayStation Network was attacked and brought down. But they have a variety of attacks and hacks that have happened over the last several years. Obviously, if you've read the news, you know this has been targeted and suggested that the North Koreans had done this. I think the thing, Matt, that I think is most interesting is that I've read a lot about a lot of hacks and cyber heists that have gone on. This one has gone pretty far and pretty deep, and that it's not just one single service within a network or a company. It's been all their servers, all their databases, all their files, mail, records, you name it. These guys took everything. So there's a lot to this hack that probably was done over a long period of time. There is some suggestion by some non-military or non-federal security experts pointing that some insiders were involved in this too. It's kind of hard to say, but certainly there was a lot that was done over a long period of time and did a lot of damage here.
Well, but as we've seen from these other examples, there can be insiders that are unwittingly involved in these because of these spear phishing attacks. So, the point for you all with your business is not just your business you're trying to protect. They may be going after your computers to get to your clients, to get to your friends, to get to other people that you know and work with. So it's definitely much more of a web.
Okay. Let's focus a little bit in on the small and medium business threats right now, and to cover 5 of these things. The biggest one that we want to really emphasize and give some examples of is the bank wire transfer heists that are going on. Ransomware, intellectual property, which we've kind of given some examples already, company credit cards, and we're really not specifically cover company credit cards. We'll cover more about what you can do to protect yourself with these kind of situations, because company credit cards that relate to businesses and consumers are pretty similar. And then PO scams, and we'll start off with the PO scam one. I kind of find this one fairly interesting. Basically, it's a low-tech, old-school kind of process that's being used. And to describe this one, this happened this last spring. Was reading about this. It's specific to the construction industry and contractors out in the Midwest. Essentially, it starts off with a forged email that's being sent to a business. In there's a forged PO, an address where goods are being shipped. And as part of the scam, people are set up to be home workers, or work from home, excuse me. And they're being told they'll be receiving goods and products online to their house. Someone will come by and pick it up. So as the process happens, these forged POs and emails get sent out. People in those companies then send out those products to these people who are unknowingly involved in this scam. They'll get a phone call that a bunch of product has been received at their home. Somebody comes by and picks it all up, and then basically it's a theft, and those products are then resold elsewhere. It was uncovered about a month after it started. Someone in the accounting department realized that some of the shipping addresses didn't match up to some previous shipping addresses they'd used before, and did a little investigation, and it became kind of widely known. The FBI got involved that probably about 4 or 5 different states across the Midwest were being compromised in this manner with a number of businesses.
Yeah, I think what's fascinating about this, and even the spear phishing ones we were talking about before, is you're getting accomplices that are somewhat unwittingly involved in this, but this is a scam that's probably over 100 years old.
Yeah,
it's the fundamentals of the scam are the same. It's just you're involving technology in a different way. It's a different tool, but it's really as old as time. So
yeah, I think it's the thing Matt and I were chatting about, is that I have to date myself. You watch the movie The Sting with Robert Redford. There was no real high tech in there. The big high tech they had was some sort of wire service. They were slowing down or speeding up to kind of get information and pretending something was going on that wasn't. And again, these scams, these cons are essentially being repurposed in a digital age, is what it comes down to.
Exactly.
Matt, you want to talk about the Cryptolocker?
Yeah. So this one is you'll either see the terminology Cryptolocker or Cryptowall. They're essentially the same thing, but this involves email phishing. It's known as ransomware. So basically, somebody will click on an email link or a link in an email that they shouldn't. It will install some software, some malware to the computer, and essentially encrypt all of the data that is on that person's hard drive. And they'll get a pop-up message that says, your personal files are encrypted. Please send $300 fee, and we'll give you the key back to open up the encryption to get your data back, which you may or may not receive. We see this more and more frequently. They're, I think, recorded about $30 million. Most of these attacks are coming from Ukraine and Russia region. We do not recommend anyone paying that fee because you really don't know where that money is going, and you don't know whether you're actually going to get your data back. So there are a couple of things you can do, but you basically need to basically wipe the machine and restore back from your last known good backup to get your data back. And a lot of these things, as we'll talk about some more, are a little bit longer plays. So it's not like you're clicking on something and then it's instantly encrypted. This could be something that you clicked on and loaded a week ago or 2 weeks ago, and then it's timed so that it goes off. So it's really important that you have a good backup and disaster recovery solution. One other thing that we recommend, which we'll emphasize again later, but that you don't have an administrator account that you're using on a day-to-day basis. So if you're, and I've done this for myself just for protection, I have a regular standard user account that I log into and use on a day-to-day basis. And then I have the admin credentials if I need to install some software. But what that will do is if I click on some link that is nefarious that's trying to load malware, it will pop up a dialog box asking me to authenticate with an administrator account. So if I don't expect that I'm installing anything by clicking on some link or opening up an email, that's going to be a warning to me that something is going on in the background that I don't expect or want. So that's a really good, simple way to protect yourself from Cryptolocker and some of this ransomware.
Matt, we have a question that came in related to this. It says, even with virus protection and firewalls, how can someone get attacked by Cryptolockers? So the question, I guess, would be, if I'm using all these other things, how come I can still get compromised?
Yeah, I mean, basically, these companies, I mean, they do their best to keep up, but the threats keep migrating and changing. So the firewall and the antivirus may not, and oftentimes we've seen with our own clients have not picked up this malware. It changes too frequently. So doing some of the things like we talked about, just not using that administrator account on a day-to-day basis will give you an extra layer of security in that sense.
Yeah, kind of technically what happened with this group of hackers, they ended up getting caught. I think they were arrested and maybe even some were thrown in jail. But before that happened, they took this package, Cryptolocker, and sold it out on the black market to other cyber thieves. And that the code then was modified and changed by a number of people. And subsequently, that's why we see, Crypto Wallet showed up. It's a different gang that has then taken that code, rewritten it in such a way that Symantec or Norton or anybody else doesn't know the code. They may recognize Cryptolocker, but they wouldn't recognize a crypto wall compromise. So they continue to make changes in the code, and that's why these, virus protection softwares and things like that don't know the difference of a good set of code and bad code because it's been modified just recently, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, it's very easy to go online and find this code and modify it yourself and change it. So these companies do their best and they do a good job, but it is very difficult to keep up.
Let's talk about another one, and this kind of gets a little closer to some of the things that you see. It's what's called a masquerading threat, and not as widely happening out there maybe as the Cryptolocker, but it is also one that we have seen ourselves. Again, there's an impersonation aspect of this. It's multi-tiered in the sense that there's a C-level impersonation that's communicating to the finance department, usually a mid-sized company. And what ends up happening is an email may go out, and it's requesting that a wire transfer be sent of some amount, somewhere around $30,000 or $40,000. A phone call follows up to someone in that department saying, this is that C-level person, I just sent you an email. We need to have that wire transferred immediately. So there's a great sense of urgency. They're talking, so the person involved with this gets authorization from all the right people and then makes the transfer happen. So it seems like, oh my gosh, it's an internal, but it's just extra checks and balances need to be, policies need to be established within these companies to make sure it doesn't happen. Basically, the money, I think the specifics I've seen, the money is being sent over to some Caribbean banks, and then gets lost after that.
And ultimately, if something doesn't feel right, just ask.
And we saw this happen.
We did. We've actually seen this within the past week with one of our clients, where someone's email was hacked, and they started the finance department started getting emails from this person asking for transfers to be made into a bank account, and the finance person thought it looked funny and went down and talked to that person and found out that it wasn't legitimate, and that the whole thing started unraveling from there. So, you know, sometimes your gut will tell you when something doesn't feel right, and then, you know, check that out.
Let's show you some things that don't look right.
Yeah.
So we all get these, and for a long time I overlooked them, but I saved a few of these here to share with you. It's basically some emails that come in and how to spot them, essentially. As Matt said, it doesn't feel right, doesn't look right. Here are some examples here for us. So here's an email I got. It was last spring. And the first thing is from the sender. I never received AT&T voicemail messages before, so that was the first flag for me. Secondly, the emails in here, yes, were to me, but also to 4 other people. So it seemed kind of odd why you get a voicemail message going to 4 other people.
Yeah. Any kind of voicemail, any phone system that sends you voicemail via email should only go to one person, right, by definition. So.
There was an attachment in a zip file, which again, it has my attention when I see something like that. And then also in here, there was a wrong date. And then finally, it said there's a contact us, and there was incomplete information inside there. So right then and there, you know, looking at this particular email, I knew there was a lot of bad signs in it, and probably should not be clicking on that attachment. Another one, financial related, of course, from PayPal. And Matt, do you want to describe this link to server?
Yeah, so it's got a click to confirm button here, and you know that I think actually, Dave, you and I were talking about this the other day. A lot of these companies have stopped putting these types of links in their email because people are using these for nefarious reasons. But one thing you can do for any kind of link that you're not sure about is just hover your cursor over that link, and it should give you above that link typically where the actual server is going. So if that doesn't line up, if there's nothing in that link that says PayPal or something just doesn't look right, it's going to a different server, you want to be wary about clicking on anything like that.
Yeah, because what ends up happening is a malware can be injected into your computer through the attachments, or when logging into a server or attaching yourself to a server by clicking on a link of some sorts like this.
Exactly.
So again, there's just some strange statements in here, awkwardly written, kind of flags. You know, for me, there's a link to a server, strange statement, sense of urgency, need help now. Those kind of things, you know, are flags for me looking at it. You know, for the most cases, you're going to get this stuff shoved into your spam, you know, in your email. But some cases, it doesn't.
But notice both examples that we just looked at, they look official,
yeah,
they look real, the logos look good, so you really have to have a good eye towards some of this stuff.
I thought this one was particularly good. This came out this past spring, or fall, excuse me. This one had a few things in here. First off, there was a good address. It was a known person within my company that was going to. Apparently, I might have been blind copied. Again, this is a general phishing attack. There was an attachment, which in my mind would have been, okay, it's a malware attachment of some type. It's banking related, and from there.
Well, one thing just before you move on, the last 2 examples we had where there were attachments, they were both zip files, which are compressed files, which means there's typically more than one. If somebody's sending you a form or something, they're sending you a PDF or a Word document or something like that. If it's a zip file, that means there's many files in there. So that's kind of a warning flag, you know, in itself.
Again, this was kind of interesting because it came out at 5 o'clock on October 30th, and it said action needed to be taken by 10 a.m. on the 31st. So again, creating this sense of urgency. So if someone was working in a finance department and they saw this come in at 5 o'clock, they may want to move on it quickly because it's the end of the day. Needed to do something. It came from our bank. We need to do something right away. Let me download this file. See what I need to do. And right then and there, that's the trigger that would have gotten them, because the malware would have been right inside that attachment. Right. Let's talk a little bit more about those wire transfer heists and how they work. This is the big threat for a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. The amount that's end up being played out is somewhere $100,000 to $1.2 million seems to be the target dollar amount that we're hearing about. So Tennessee Electric Company, Finance Department, $327,000. Escrow, Choice Escrow out of Springfield, $440,000. City of Poughkeepsie, this was kind of, I think about a year and a half ago, 2 months worth of payroll, $378,000. Luna out of Texas, it's another escrow company, $1.2 million was taken by these wire transfer heists. Let me give you an example of how these wire transfer heists take place. Very similar, everything I'm going to describe to you is kind of what we've been setting up for, but you'll see the steps that are being taken by the hackers. And this particular one is within a hospital out in the state of Washington, again, about a year ago. So the hackers get themselves started. In this case, I don't think it was a spear phishing attack. I think it was a general phishing attack, like some of the emails I showed you. They'll first, what they did was contract out with about 100 home workers, work from home employees in the state of California. So they had 100 people already lined up for themselves. And what they did with them, they said, look, if we're going to work together, we need to have a banking relationship so we can pay you. So they established some relationship that way. The phishing attack went out through emails likely, and then the hospital was then compromised with malware. Specifically, it was a keylogger, the one called Zeus I described for you earlier. Basically a package that was installed. The keyloggers recording every keystroke that people in the finance department were using. So they had all the banking information, everything they needed to do. That information was being secretly all sent back to the hackers. After the hackers had all that information, they then could target the bank the hospital was using, and the next step was they'd start sending off small amounts of money to these home workers from the bank, about $50 at a time, just to see if the system was working properly for themselves. Once the $50 were going through, over the course of the next weekend after that, the hackers were able to send between $5,000 and $10,000 to each one of these home workers, and then those $5,000 and $10,000 were shipped to the Ukrainian banks for the total heist of about $1 million. At the end of this, they did recover some of the money, but you can see the steps that were taking place here. Some of the stuff we've already described to you.
Yeah, it's a really key point that Dave brings up about the small transactions. Most of the examples of these wire transfers start with very small transactions. So, and this is true even with your personal finances. A lot of times the criminals out there, if they get your credit card number, they will try very small $20 transactions. So you need to keep an eye on things that don't look right, that you don't recognize, especially if they're small, because like the video said, these people are in for the long play. They're very patient. They will try over long periods of time, and you just have to keep paying attention.
Yeah, again, I've seen a couple other accounts and organizations we work with. As Matt described, the process was started, and even know of a local college here that they got so far as to the $50 are being emailed out, and the bank was transferring the money, and that's where they stopped them at the $50 mark. So is it safe? This is a screenshot from the movie Marathon Man, and if you remember that movie.
Can't forget that scene.
Yeah. So we've sufficiently scared you now. We want to share with you that it is safe to a certain degree if you follow some good lessons learned. And let's just share some of those things, especially in the wire transfer area, the heist that happened there. One of the most important things we'd like to suggest to folks is using a dedicated banking computer. And that would be a computer that stands off by itself, not maybe even on a wireless network. It's all hardwired in, has no email attached to it. It's not being used by the department other than to make transfers and banking completely. So it's just a dedicated device. Following a good password policy, which we'll explain in a moment. Working with your bank for bank transfer notices. And as we've been mentioning here, watch out for these small transactions that are going on to inappropriate places. And the same thing happens with for yourself personally. So if you credit card, monitor your credit cards in the same way. Watching for $1 transactions is another way of looking at it. But for your business, $50 transactions, $10 transactions is really important to monitor.
It happened to me recently. Somebody got my credit card number, and I found two $20 transactions that didn't make sense back-to-back days. and I call the credit card company and we shut it down immediately. So got to pay attention.
Matt, do you want to cover for us some of the password policies we're suggesting?
Yeah, so I mean, this is everyone's least favorite topic probably in terms of passwords, but they're really, really important. So we do recommend you use long, complex passwords, a minimum of 8 characters. If you can get above 12 to 14 characters, that would be fantastic. We want at least a capital letter, lowercase letter, symbol, and a number. So in addition to at least 8 characters, those are really good passwords. Make sure you have different passwords for different sites. Do not use the same password again and again, and make changes to those passwords frequently. And we know this is difficult, so we do recommend some kind of password manager, because everybody has a limited number of long, complicated passwords that they can remember. So there are a lot of good programs that are out there that will help you with that task. Make sure you auto-lock your mobile devices with both Apple's iOS and Android devices. Once you turn on and enable auto-lock, you enable the encryption of that device. So if something happens, you can easily wipe that data without having that turned on. And then two-factor authentication is really key. Just to make sure that you are who you say you are. We're going to go into a little more detail on that.
Before we move off, one thing I want to suggest too, and we do this in our own company, is when someone leaves our business, we change the locks on our door. When someone leaves your business or leaves that department, the password should be changed as well. It's for your protection and their protection.
In addition to knowing that they're not walking out with your data on their devices.
Right.
So very important.
Two-factor authentication. Again, this is an extra layer. It's an extra step in verification. The idea is, for authentication purposes, logging in for passwords is something that you know. Something that you have is your phone. So how two-step authentication works is that for any number of accounts, it could be Apple, Google, banking systems. We use it with our cloud services. Is that if you've seen the RSA token generators that a lot of enterprise companies work with, it's a similar process, except the difference is instead of being the token generator, the small device in the screen there, it ends up being your phone. You can establish and turn that security on for services such as Dropbox, for example. So you go into your security settings, turn on two-factor authentication, and at that point, once they know your phone number is one way of setting this up, if you want to log in, you would need for the first time to know your phone number. They would send you a text message. You would add that text message as a final step and extra layer of authentication. So name, password, get the text message to put that extra code in there. So it's it's really a third step because you name and password, but it's two-factor authentication.
So password managers, like we just mentioned, I personally rely on one. We're using 1Password as an example here, but there are others like LastPass and several others. So find one that works for you. You want to make sure that they're securely storing your passwords. That data is encrypted. There are alerts available and also two-factor authentication with some of these programs. They're available on mobile devices or on your desktop or laptops, Windows, Mac, accessible from pretty much anywhere, including the web. So this will, again, help you create and save a lot of complicated passwords and using good password management.
Yeah, there's a lot of extra features in these particular applications. It's not just a secure database. Some of them actually provide notices to vulnerabilities that have happened. So if Netflix got compromised some point in time, I hadn't changed my password in a while. So the next time I was in 1Password on my desktop system, it gave me a notice saying, hey, look, there's been a compromise on this particular organization or this service that you're using. You might want to change that password. So it's a really good system of doing it. It's really hard to keep up with passwords, especially as Matt and I were sharing with you, that being complex, being different and frequent changes, and this is a way to manage that for yourself. Let's talk about cloud computing, because we did have a question that came in, security in the cloud. Is it secure? Is it a good direction to go? Again, is it safe? Matt, do you want to?
Yeah, and I would say it is a good direction for people to go. I mean, one aspect that you're taking off the table by using a safe cloud computing platform is the physical security of your network and of your servers. I mean, we've walked into client situations of new clients where the server is out in the open, or the server closet is not locked and anybody can walk in. I have seen in past jobs businesses actually robbed, and they have taken computers, desktop servers. So just taking that off the table itself as a first step gives cloud computing an advantage.
And again, the same precautions that we've been suggesting with passwords and safe use of mobile devices with cloud computing or laptops is really important in combination. But as Matt described, you're taking all the fundamental back-end data that it may be costly or complicated to make secure and putting it in a much safer and secure environment. So our thought for most small, medium-sized businesses, it's a better direction to go into.
And there are certainly, I mean, every cloud computing platform has different features, but
right.
with the ones that you want to look for, you want to make sure they're encrypted. You want to make sure that there is a good backup and disaster recovery solution, so that if you do find yourself in a tricky situation, you're backed up and you're protected.
Just cover a few mobile safety tips here for us. First off, we want to suggest avoiding free Wi-Fi, especially if you're traveling in an airport and you look for a Wi-Fi hotspot and it says free Wi-Fi. It's a big flag of what not to do. Again, avoiding much of free Wi-Fi is probably the bottom line, a really important thing to do. If you do need to use it, we encourage that you use a service called a VPN, or virtual private network. For about $60 a year, if you travel a lot, you can create and use this service, which will basically encrypt the data that's being transmitted across your device, particularly it's wireless, and people can't see what you're doing or can't sniff out your packets that are being sent across the wireless networks at that point. There's still some issues and some compromises that can happen, but you're putting yourself in a better spot all the way along the way.
And if you do connect to free Wi-Fi, do not do any kind of financial transactions, any banking. Don't put any credit card information or any business information in there. It's simply not safe.
Yeah. And then I just assume as you're traveling, it's very insecure. One of the better places to be, or services to use, is your phone service with data. If you're using Verizon or AT&T, you're using that service, that's actually more secure than anything else. One of the tools that we'll share with you here is for your mobile devices is Find My iPhone, and we really highly encourage everyone to take advantage of the auto locking features within all smartphones that automatically lock themselves after a minute or two. So Find My iPhone, this is actually a screenshot of, I think 70% of all businesses are using iPhones. So I'm just going to give you the example. There is a program called Android Lost, which will do the similar thing. But basically what it provides is a layer of protection for your smartphone, which again holds a lot of data here and a lot of information, personal and business. And this service, or this particular feature, needs to be turned on. So in your settings in your iPhone, you need to turn Find My iPhone on. Once done, though, it's much easier to locate it. This is actually a map. It shows us by the Columbia Mall where our office is, and I'm in the building, and a picture of my iPhone there. And
the nice feature that they just added in iOS 8 is with Lost Mode, you can actually send an alert to the phone so that it beeps, or a message saying, call this number. And the latest feature was the last thing that the phone will do before the battery dies is send its location to Apple servers where they will store it for, I believe, up to 2 months before it's wiped. So you have one last shot at recovering that device before, even though the battery is dead.
Yeah, so this works well if you've lost your iPhone in your house and you can't find it. Yeah. You can send a beep. I've lost my iPhone. I was out actually on a golf course, and I lost it on the golf course. I put the phone number in there of my friend, and I got a call back at the end of the day that someone did find my iPhone and turned it in. I've also had a friend who was traveling in Europe, and he lost his iPhone and could erase the iPhone remotely.
Yeah, we've recovered quite a few client devices using this and similar tools. Just real quick, Android, if you are using Android, please make sure there is a lot of malware out there for Android, so please make sure that you load some antivirus and anti-malware tools if you're using an Android device.
Some other things to mention here is a little bit of the analog low-tech aspects of what we still deal with. We mentioned dumpster dives earlier, and again, be wary of what you put in your trash. Use shredders. Look out for phone calls. And again, these are all used in combination with other cyber heists and threats that happen. Just real quickly, it's tax season coming up. I know we have a lot of folks with us today who are tax preparers or accountants, and this is a big, important part of being prepared for your own as well as your customers. Just some information on this. And I did a lot of research on this over the last 6 months, and the number of people that are compromised with identity theft is pretty high, 10 million per year as per the FTC. Just last year, there was about $5.2 billion in tax refunds that were compromised. And probably the most disappointing part about it all is 32% of these compromises originated from family members. So someone in their house turns information into somebody else, 18% by a friend or in-home employee. So half of all identity theft originates from someone you know. And interestingly enough, 20% of all victims were in their 20s. Let's review some of these steps that we've been talking to you about. Matt, you want to talk about the regular backups for us?
So regular backups are key. I think we've talked about this a couple times, particularly with some of the ransomware. You want to be able to make sure that that you or your IT person can go back to a backup that is free of any kind of malware. So really critical.
Keeping devices updated is really important. This includes virus protection, as we discussed, but also just applications and operating systems. So using the most recent updates more often than not includes security updates as well, and help keep all your devices protected.
Yeah, make sure you follow the password policies that we talked about, at least 8 characters, uppercase, lowercase, symbol, and number. Make sure you secure your devices both physically and turning on things like auto lock and password protect, so you're encrypting those devices. Make sure you follow smart mobile habits that we outlined.
And of course, working with your banks and making sure there's procedures there about notices for you that they can set up for you with credit cards as well as banking transactions, as most importantly.
Exactly.
Let's just cover a couple questions we have in here. I had someone asked us the question even before we started. So I have an employee or multiple employees that seem to spend a lot of time on the internet with games and other websites. They're very concerned. Is there a way to protect, keep them protected, or keep my business protected as they're out there on the internet?
Well, you definitely want to make sure you're doing the basics, the firewall, the spyware, the anti-malware. If their job requires them to be on the internet, then it's a little harder. But you could go with a desktop as a service platform, which creates a cloud desktop for you, which we have webinars on coming up. In which case you would have the ability to turn off internet for that person to protect them. So there's also content filtering that's available on a lot of the firewalls, so you could blacklist specific websites that you thought were a problem and work it that way. But there's a couple different ways to handle it, but it's definitely different.
The last thing to suggest me that is making sure that those employees are educated. I mean, that's probably the most important thing, because you can put as much technology as you want into it and still going to have some of these problems as we described with social engineering. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Just a reminder, Matt and I are part of Ease Technologies. We were founded in 1993. We're based out of Columbia, Maryland, and we provide IT services and secure cloud solutions. Please visit us on our website. And I have another offer for you as well, which is for the first 3 accounts to email me, we'll provide a free security assessment of your business. Again, this is just a kind of a straightforward 1-hour review of what we talked about today, but we would be more than happy to take some time and review your specific situation and see if there's some things you can do to improve your security in your business and what you have going on. Please feel free to email me at dave@easetech.com, and I'll be glad to get in touch with you about that. Our next webinar will be on February 18th from 12 to 1 o'clock. We'll be discussing and sharing tips and information for those who are using iPads and iPhones in their business, and we'll have some invitations coming out for that probably in a couple weeks. And again, I want to thank you. Please feel free to email me with any questions afterwards. I'm more than happy to share anything that we may have missed for you. And please, also, there'll be a survey and feedback. I'd love to hear from you about how we did, and if there's any suggestions or ideas. We are recording the webinar and be happy to share with you that recording later on as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Take care.